go. Got it. Okay. Let's go to Matrix, our friend. All right. Back to Zoom. Share screen. And Matrix. There we go. Okay. So can everybody see that all right? Give me a thumbs up or a yes. So look at the market watch up here in the right-hand corner the last 7 days. All right, 947 new listings, 522 solds. Pending 735. And price decrease is 817. That's a huge increase in the activity in the market from December. And an even bigger increase since when I last looked at the market information right before Ian, where that new listing number was down around 500, solds around 400, pendings 400, price decreases 500. So the market is very active. I've heard from a lot of agents that we're back to multiple offers in many cases, and there's quite a bit of activity out there. So the mortgage rates have dropped into the middle sixes, and I'm seeing when I'm doing my contract reviews, quite a few instances where the seller is doing some concessions. So all of this, I think, is pretty good news. And the fact is that the demand is still there. The supply is up to about 2.2 months, which is 70% more than last year in Collier, and up to 1.9 months in Lee, up 58%. So even though we're still very much at a seller's market, activity in terms of the number of options for buyers is up quite a bit. Even though sales are down quite a bit over last year, part of the increase in inventory is because of the corresponding decrease in sales. Collier down 36% year over year, Lee down 24% year over year. Pendings until recently have been down quite a bit, down 37% in Collier year over year, down 26% in Lee. We'll have all the graphs ready for tomorrow's sales meeting. So in Wednesday's meeting on Marco. So we'll have everything ready in graphic form, but I just wanted to do a little bit of analysis for today's discussion. And I'll just show you real quickly where you can get this stuff, right? In the middle, either you have InfoSparks from your main screen here, or you go to InfoSparks here on your links. Either way you go. Let's see what we got. I can't get this to. Other way. There we go. Can everybody see InfoSparks, or do I need to reshare the screen? Can you see the graph?
I can see it.
Okay, cool. So where can I get all this stuff? You can get all this stuff by just going into InfoSparks, pick your market. We're going to do Collier County. And we're going to do Lee County. And if you want to drill down to a particular neighborhood or Naples or a zip code, or you can do it real easily by just specifying what area, and you can do up to 4. So if I just wanted to do the Naples market, just to show you how that was comparing, I can add up to 4 different variables in here, and I can vary them by price ranges, property type, single family condo, bedrooms, bathrooms, construction type, waterfront. So you can actually go in here and get a fairly good analysis. If you're working on a CMA for a customer, you can get a good look at at what's happening. So you can see that we are looking now at the December stats, which are just now being finalized over the prior December. So you can see prices are still going up. New listings are down over last year. Homes for sale up quite a bit. This is December over December, not year over year, December over December last year. But look at the number of homes for sale jumping up close to 100% across the board. Pendings are down. Pendings are our advanced look at what's going to happen. Most contracts close 30 to 60 days. So over the next 30 to 60 days, we're seeing pending activity down over last year, but the last few days in looking at the MLS report seem to see a little bit of a pickup in pendings. Total sales, look at that, down substantially over last year. So part of the reason that we have more inventory, we don't have as many, we don't have quite as many new listings coming on the market, although Lee County pretty steady. We have less sales, and the issue here is that even though we have less sales, we have increasing prices, starting to increase at a lower rate. What does that mean? It means that as we get into 2023, the last few months of 2022 showed quite a bit lower sales, but still prices increasing significantly. But now we're showing that the rate of these increases is down quite a bit, and so we expect the rate of increase in prices to flatten out quite a bit in the upcoming year, even though we're still showing some increases December over December. So we looked at pending sales, total sales. Let's look at average days on market. You can see that number for years back over here was in the 90s and hundreds. But then all of a sudden, when we hit 21 and first part of 22, we saw these numbers plummet to very small numbers. Now what we're seeing, obviously, with the increase in inventory, the decrease in sales, properties are staying on the market longer. Good for buyers. And good for making sure you set the expectations of your sellers. You know, this isn't last year at this time. This isn't last first quarter of 2022, where things progressed pretty much as the last part of 2021. We're starting to see these numbers go out, up almost 80% in Collier, 70% in Lee, and overall Naples market, 81%. Month supply. So we're up almost 210% in Collier for all property types. Again, you can go back and look and see, okay, well, what about single family? I can look at that and notice that's even more of an increase in inventory in single family homes and not quite so much in condos. 2.4, still up substantially over last year, and all property types up. But now we're starting to see a trend toward less and less of a seller's market. 6 months is considered balanced. But remember last year at this time, in January, look at that, we didn't even have a whole month worth of inventory. So now we're up to almost 3 months in Collier, 2.5 months in Lee, and overall Naples market, three months. So more opportunities for buyers, prices flattening, interest rates coming down into the, at least into the sixes. I think we're starting to see the market. What's this question here? Why are Naples days on market higher than Lee County? This is strictly an average, right? Based on all of the properties that have been on the market at the end of December. And if you look, traditionally, if Lee is the, look at that, isn't traditionally, even as we go way back into 2021, look how Lee is less than Collier, about the same there. But as we start to ramp up in inventory, notice how the days on market are growing faster in Collier and Naples than in Lee. So anyhow, yes, the affordability factor in Lee County has always been quite a bit different. Look at the difference in the median price and the growth in median price in Lee versus Naples and Collier. Part of that is the mix of inventory. In Collier, we just have hardly any properties under 300,000. And used to be, we had quite a few. Used to be the smaller condos and especially the inland ones. They were our median back in 2021. Go back to 2020, pre-COVID, Collier median 353,000, Lee County 239,000. So the Lee County median, because of affordability and because of the product mix, has always been a lower than Collier. So, let's see if there's anything else we can. Oh, this is another one that I think would be kind of interested in looking at on average. Look at what's happened to the percent of list price from its peak over 100, staying up 99, 98. Now let's see what's happening. Naples seems to be even more dramatic in terms of the percent of list price to selling price than Lee. So what does that mean? That means that there's a little room for negotiations. That means that, we used to put our graphs out and say, if you're thinking of making a low offer, look at your average in April of 22. And even down into July and August, we're still sitting 98, 99%. And then things started to change a little bit. Interest rates jumped up and buyers were experiencing much higher costs to buy. And as a result, we seem to see more contracts. I look at all the contracts every month. So we're seeing more contracts come through with seller concessions. And that's good if you're working with a buyer and the buyer says, what can I do to get my interest rate down from 6.5 to 6? Or maybe I want to do a 3-2-1 buyout kind of thing where I pay a less interest rate this year and jumps up next year by 1 point and jumps up the third year by another point. 2-1 buyouts, 3-2-1 buyouts allow the buyer to experience a lower interest rate, especially earlier on in their mortgage. Okay, so just a quick year in review. The one thing that doesn't show on here, and it's a stat that I've been introducing into our graphs because I think the word absorption is easier to understand for a customer than months supply. You can tell them there's 3 months supply, but interestingly enough, a year ago, December 21, Collier absorption was 89%. That means that there was almost a good chance that a home would sell in a month. We saw that on days on market, but as of December 22, it's 24%, meaning 1 in 4 homes are selling on a monthly basis. In Lee County, it was 94% a year ago, meaning almost 100% chance of a house selling it within a month after it went on the market. Now it's 31%, still quite a bit higher than Collier, but 31% means a home has a chance, 31% chance of selling in 30 days. So essentially, there's your 3 months overall inventory. Anyhow, I think that if you could go to your dashboard in Matrix and study these numbers, especially if you're working with a customer that is interested in a market or a neighborhood. Remember, you can go into your market watch and you can customize that to a neighborhood or an area or a particular type of design. When I look at single family homes in Naples, and I just save that and I go back to my dashboard, and then now I'm looking at the last 7 days of single family homes in Naples. So you can use these tools that you have on the dashboard of your MLS very effectively to feel comfortable what's going on in the market, what's going on in a particular neighborhood or a particular area of town that a buyer is interested in. And again, you can go back to your info sparks and start looking at it on a graphics basis. Start looking at changes. Again, you can drill this down into price changes, price ranges, property types, all kinds of things. So a lot of information available to you at your fingertips, in addition to the monthly graphs and charts that I send out every month on Facebook and talk about at the sales meetings. So it's important as we're talking about, till probably you're tired of hearing about it, we moved from a luck-based market to a skill-based market where it requires more information to be given to your customers to help them understand, what it is, what time it is to buy, what it can mean for them. But as long as we still keep seeing this, that means that a customer will buy, even though they're buying a property at a higher price than they might have bought 6 months to a year ago, they're still seeing appreciation. So even though I'm paying 6%, I still have a chance of seeing a price appreciation to keep up with my investment. I don't think there's much more we can say here. Let's see what we got. Questions? Are manufactured home trailers without wheels treated as condos or single family when doing comparisons? Okay, so a manufactured or mobile home that's not attached to land, in other words, if the land is being leased or not owned separately with the land. In other words, you go into the property appraiser's office and look up that address. If it has a PID, that means that it's land and building, and then you can sell it as real estate. However, if it's a mobile home or a manufactured home that's on leased land, that requires a motor vehicle license to sell. It's not within our purview as real estate agents to sell manufactured or mobile homes that are not associated with the land that they're sitting on. So unless you want to go get your motor vehicle license, always make sure if somebody calls you for a listing in a mobile home or manufactured home community, that the land underneath it is owned and not leased by, to somebody else that owns it. All righty then. Let's go back here. And let's talk a little bit about a topic that I'd like to continue to remind everybody of when I hear them say, wonder why my camera is not focusing very well here. Okay. I hear a lot of agents talk about working with their clients. And other than one or two agents that we have in our market center that operate as single agents, we work with customers. And I'll show you here. Let me just go here. I'm going to show you a couple of things here that I think are pretty important. Neighbor contracts. All right. Share distribution. Okay, so a few years ago, the legislature passed a change to the brokerage relationship law and said, okay, if you don't notice you don't give notice to a customer, you're acting as a transaction broker. So the default relationship in Florida is transaction broker. And as transaction brokers, we only have customers. We don't have clients. And the word client is an implication that you have a fiduciary responsibility to your client, such as an attorney or a doctor or anybody that deals with clients. We deal with customers 99.99% of the time. As I say, we do have a couple of agents in our brokerage that operate as single agents. They've done so for years. They do it because they're very experienced and because they appreciate the nature of the fiduciary relationship. But in terms of what we do as transaction brokers, let's make sure we review this because it's kind of important. And when I hear an agent go, oh, I called my client the other day, I'm like, oh, really? So you've got a law degree, or you've disclosed your relationship as a single agent. No, you're a transaction broker. So remember the duties of a transaction broker: dealing honestly and fairly, accounting for all funds, using skill, care, and diligence. So honestly and fairly, accounting for all funds, skill, care, and diligence. That's true whether there is a no brokerage relationship or a transaction broker relationship. And then as we go into transaction broker, disclosing all known facts that materially affect the value of residential real property and not readily observable. That's Johnson v. Davis. If you know of something that a customer, if you know of something that a customer might need to know that is not readily available, you have to disclose that. As a listing agent, if you know something about the property that is not reasonably available to the buyer, you have an obligation to disclose it. Does Florida allow for an exclusive buyer agent? Yes, we do. We'll talk about it in just a minute. It's called single agency. However, most brokerages, including ours, traditionally operate in Florida as a transaction broker. There's quite a bit more liability when you establish a single agent fiduciary responsibility. Other states, some in the Northeast, operate by default as a single agent and a client realtor relationship. But in Florida, especially because we're so litigious here, the fiduciary responsibility is more complicated and could involve a great deal of liability to the agent and the broker if there becomes a financial issue in a transaction. So presenting all offers and counteroffers in a timely manner, unless a party has previously directed the licensee otherwise in writing. Okay, so we have agents in our MLS that seem to like to operate as gatekeepers, but as transaction brokers, we're not gatekeepers. We need to, by law, present all offers and let our customer know, especially if we're a listing agent, that an offer has come in. And the only time there might be an exception on that is if the seller says to the listing agent, I don't want any offers that are not cash. Okay, we got an email to confirm that. And then when a buyer agent calls, and I always recommend you call the listing agent before you present your offer. Say, are there any, things that your customer would like in our offer? Any terms? And if the agent says, well, my sellers told me in writing that we're only going to accept cash offers. Okay, that's a valid rule as long as it's established between the seller and the listing agent. In many cases, you'll send a NABOR contract and they'll say, oh, we're only accepting FAR bar as is. So really, you have that in writing from your seller? Well, no, but that's what all we're going to take. Wrong. Unless the seller has told you in writing that they're only going to accept a certain type of contract, then you don't have the authority as an agent to say we're not accepting that contract. That's a violation of your responsibilities and could result in an ethics case against you. But so I don't know too many sellers that won't take an offer no matter what form it's in. They're trying to sell, and they'd be willing probably to entertain any offer. And we have a responsibility as transaction brokers to present all offers to our seller and to accept all offers from a buyer's agent for presentation. So always be cautious that when you're dealing with the buyer's agent or listing agent and they're giving you limitations on what offer they'll accept, that you make sure that's in instructions of the seller. So again, matter of practice, I say it almost every time we have a class, always, if you're a buyer's agent, always call the listing agent to learn everything you can about the property, if there's other offers, and maybe what form the other offers are in. And if there's anything that the seller would like to have in an offer, in addition to the money, that would make your offer more attractive to the seller, such as maybe some time to move out, 30 days or so post-closing occupancy, things like that can make your offer, even if it's not quite as high on the money side, can make your offer more attractive to the seller, where they might say, well, an additional $5,000 from this offer, and they want to close in 2 weeks, and here's an offer for $5,000 less, but it gives us 30 or 45 days post-closing occupancy. That might win the deal for you. So always call the listing agent, always find out what the seller is looking for. Okay, let's talk about paragraph number 6. Limited confidentiality unless waived in writing by a party. Limited confidentiality will prevent disclosure that the seller will accept a price less than the asking or listed price, that the buyer will pay a price greater than the price submitted in a written offer, of the motivation of any party for selling or buying a property, that a seller or buyer will agree to financing terms other than those offered, or other information requested by a party to remain confidential. So, motivation is one that's often asked. Why is your seller selling? Well, unless you have permission from your seller to tell them that they're being transferred to another part of the country, or they're looking to buy another home in the area or whatever, unless you have the discussion with your seller as a listing agent and they've said to you, we have no trouble if you let people know the following. But if it's a divorce, or if it's something going related in the family, or if it's an estate issue or death of a party, and you don't have the permission from your seller to disclose that, then discussing the motivation of a buyer, or of a seller, or maybe a buyer, is not something that you have the right to do. You have limited confidentiality. So that's an important thing, and we're going to look in a minute at single agency to see the difference here. But limited representation means that a buyer or seller is not responsible for the acts of the licensee. When you are a single agent and you have a client, your client is responsible for your actions, as well as you're responsible for your relationship to your client. Additionally, parties are giving up their rights to the undivided loyalty of the licensee. This aspect of limited representation allows a licensee to facilitate a real estate transaction by assisting both the buyer and seller, but a licensee will not work to represent one party to the detriment of the other party when acting as a transaction broker. So you know what? Many of you, I see when you submit your contracts for compliance, you include this document signed by your buyers or sellers. And that means that you've taken the time to discuss the situation to them, to discuss the relationship that you have with them and what your limitations are in that relationship. They're not a client. You do not have a fiduciary responsibility. They're not responsible for your actions. And if for some reason I am representing both sides of a transaction, I can do so long as I don't work to the detriment of either side. Now, a lot of people are excited when they call me and say, "Oh, I'm really excited. I got both sides of this deal." Great. That means that you have a chance to collect on your behalf the total commission being offered by the seller, or maybe you've made a deal with the seller saying, if I have both sides, you'll pay a little less commission. Great, except a lot of people call me and say, "What do I do now?" And I say, well, you know what? Depending upon the temperament of either side, depending upon how the negotiations went, you might want to have another agent in the office help you by representing the other side. And everybody looks, well, that's money out of my pocket. Yes, it's money out of your pocket. I agree 100%. However, many cases you'll be trundling along and there'll be an inspection item, or there'll be some situations that come up that you have to be in the middle. You have to not represent either side to the detriment of the other. And the seller will say to you, you're just working for the buyer. You're not helping me out, bringing me all these inspection items and ask me to repair all these things. You're not representing me. And the vice versa on the buyer's side, when the seller says, here's what I'm willing to do, here's what's effective, here's what's not. Well, the buyer say, hey, are you looking out for my best interest? So it can be a slippery slope. And many cases, you might have a partner or colleague in the office. You might say, hey, I'll give you a referral fee or 30% of my commission if you'll help me out, making sure that the customer has, feels like we have focus on their best interest. So, just saying. Let's look real quick at the single agent. Okay, so let's take a look at this and see what's different. Dealing honestly and fairly, accounting for all funds, skill, care, and diligence, presenting all offers and counteroffers in a timely manner, and disclosing all known facts that materially affect the value of the transaction. Those are all part of the transaction broker relationship. But now we're adding loyalty, confidentiality, obedience, and full disclosure to our relationship with our client. Okay. And the client is responsible for your actions and your statements and your dealings with other professionals and with other parties to the transaction. So when you talk about full disclosure, what do you think I should pay for this property? What's your opinion of how this should be handled or how this offer should go forward? Confidentiality. One I learned from you, I cannot disclose under any circumstances to the other side. Loyalty. I must be loyal to you regardless of any information that comes to me during the course of our transaction. Obedience, kind of one of the most difficult to explain parts of the relationship. Obedience. The seller says to you, I want you to go and knock on all the doors in the neighborhood and let all my neighbors know that we're selling, and that we appreciate anybody that they could send to us. And you're not a door knocker, and you'd rather not do that. Well, it's a single agent relationship. The seller has made a reasonable request to you. You need to do it. So there's some responsibilities as far as obedience goes that are not part of the transaction broker relationship. Full confidentiality. No matter what I say to you, you're not able to disclose that to the other side. And loyalty. You're loyal to me and to my interest, and you're not going to worry too much about what the buyer says or does. So it's a much more strict relationship. It's what we call fiduciary because of the full disclosure, because of the loyalty and confidentiality, and it's a much more complicated relationship. So unless you want to do single agency and you come and discuss with me why you want to do that, we're going to ask you to operate as a transaction broker, and we're going to ask you to talk about your customers and your loyalty to the transaction, not wanting to do anything to the detriment of the other side. So again, we have customers, we do not have clients in most of our dealings with other real estate professionals representing a buyer or representing a seller. So I know there's only a small group here. I'm going to continue to try to get this message out this year. I'm a little concerned about the potential liability of your referring to my client in an email or in a conversation when in fact they're not your client, and he might be sending an implication over to the other side about a relationship and about responsibilities that you don't have. So please take that to heart. And the last thing we'll talk about today, which is on our agenda, is we're going to go and look at the buyer broker agreement and talk a little bit about loyalty. There's a couple of different things that I want to show you here. There's this one. And then there is one that, this one. Okay, so let's talk about the first one first. Back here, go live, go share screen. Okay, so this one is one that I get calls on a lot. If you're working with a FSBO, okay, or there's not the property's not listed for any reason, but you've knocked on the door or you've learned that a seller might want to sell, remember that the sales contract has nothing to do with compensation. So you can't put in the other terms and conditions of a sales contract that the seller will pay the buyer's agent 3%. If you put it in there, it won't have any impact and won't allow you to have a contractual relationship to get paid at closing. So if you're working with a for sale by owner or an unlisted property, you need to have some agreement with the owner of the property that you'll get paid a commission if you bring a buyer and it consummates a sale. So this showing commission agreement for sale is a no brokerage relationship with the seller. And you're going to agree within a certain period of time in paragraph 1, that if you bring a ready, willing, and able buyer, that the seller will compensate you 3%, 2.5%, whatever you work out with them, okay? So this is actually what this is. It's a mini listing contract, okay? It establishes a limited relationship between you and the owner of the property that says that if I bring you a buyer and it meets the conditions that we're agreeing to here, that you will pay me a commission at closing. So one of the things that everybody gets a little hung up on is if any deposits paid by a buyer retained by the seller, 50% thereof, not exceeding the full amount of unpaid broker's compensation, shall be paid to the broker. That means that you have a deal and it fell through and the buyer defaulted, and now you're wanting to claim 50% of that amount for your compensation. Some sellers get a little excited about that. It doesn't happen very often. If it becomes an issue, I say take it out and have both parties initial it, okay? And number 4 is the other paragraph that sellers tend to get a little excited about, because it says if there's a ready, willing, and able buyer brought to you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, and you decide you don't want to sell, then or you don't want to sell for this purchase price or above, then we can demand a commission from you. So again, this is a floor that the seller can establish to say, you know, I'm going to pay you 3% if you bring me a buyer, but the buyer has to be willing to pay more than $525,000. If you bring me a buyer for $400,000, I'm not obligated to pay you. And that's what this paragraph can be interpreted as. It can also be interpreted as if we put 525 there and I bring you a buyer for 525 or 530, and you decide you don't want to sell, that you owe me a commission. So it's a little bit of a loyalty agreement. It's a little bit of a compensation agreement, but I probably get more calls from people that are working with for sale by owners or off-market properties on what form to use than almost any other call I get. So I want you to be aware of this. It's in the library. There's also a commission agreement for the FAR bar contract that's in the library. And basically you have to have this in order to get paid for a property that's not listed on the MLS. It's listed on the MLS, there's the promise of compensation from the seller to a co-broke. And then this form is not required. Okay, any questions, comments?
Nope.
Okay. So let's go on to the next form, which is the topic of today. Okay, according to this, participants can now see your application. All right, so the buyer broker exclusive agreement is a loyalty agreement, in my opinion, more than it is anything else. And it's a good idea. There are agents that will not work with a buyer unless they sign this. And there are controversial sections in here that we can talk about as we go through it. But basically, in a resort market, still we're pretty much a resort market, and buyers can tend to be very fickle. They can work with you to see half a dozen properties, and then you call them back to see how they're doing, and you get radio silence. And all of a sudden, lo and behold, you finally do catch up with them, and they say, "Oh yeah, we ended up working with Jeff Jones, and we bought a house from him, but we liked you. We just, he had a better property. Thanks a lot. Good luck to you." Those are not pleasant conversations, whether they come in an email or a voice call, to know that you worked hard, and yet the buyer felt like they were perfectly okay to go to an open house and deal with the agent that they meet at the open house or grocery store or wherever. So there's a certain relationship here that's established. So we also have, and if you're interested, just let me know. We have what are called loyalty agreements, which just discuss, what I'm going to do for you, and what I expect from you as a buyer. All right. So the first part of it is, here's what I'm going to do for you. The second part of it is, here's our relationship. Notice that it defaults to a transaction broker relationship. So you don't have to put anything in there, or you can put transaction broker. You can also include the transaction broker notice that we just talked about if you want to go through with the potential buyer, what your relationship is with them. And then this is paragraph 3 is the loyalty part. It basically says, hey, you're going to work with me. I'm going to bust my butt for you, and you're going to work with me, and we're going to work together and try to find you the best possible option, whether it's now or into the future, to invest here in Southwest Florida. So the buyer's role is discussed, just as the broker's role is discussed in paragraph 1. The agreement can have a term, right? And during that term, if buyers enter a contract of purchase or lease any property identified to buyer during the term, then the buyer will pay the broker's compensation. So if you're looking at a FSBO and the seller says, I'm not going to pay you a commission, and the buyer says, well, it's fine, I'd like to buy this house, I'll pay you the commission. Now, paragraph 5 is the one that everybody gets all shaken up about. And that's basically says that if you go to work with somebody else behind my back, let's say we look at a place and you call the listing agent and say, hey, I'd like to come talk to you and try to see if you can wrangle a better deal because you don't have a buyer's rep involved. And you do that and it's successful, theoretically, we could come after you for a commission, even though it was paid to another agent. A lot of buyers object to this when you're talking to them about it. I have always taken the opinion that if you object to that, then I'll put zeros in there. I'm not looking for you to pay me. I'm looking for your loyalty. So this is a kind of a sticky paragraph, but It doesn't get enforced very often. I have had cases where we sought enforcement and got paid. I had a situation where a lawyer was working with one of our agents, and the lawyer knew what he'd signed, and yet he went around behind the buyer's agent, cut a deal with a listing agent for a property. And we found out about it because it closed in the MLS, and the agent saw it, and I went back to the customer and said, you know, you're an attorney, you signed this contract, you know what it means. And he said, okay, I'll pay you half now and half in, you know, or the last third every month for the next 3 months. Okay. But he knew as a lawyer exactly what they were signing, and it was well explained to him, so there wasn't any discussion. But, you know, I don't know, would we sue a little old lady that didn't fully understand what she was signing? Maybe not. So this is a discussion about compensation. If you work with somebody else, it doesn't have to be in there. It can be crossed out. You can put zeros in there. You're talking about loyalty. And in creating any document for legal purposes, there's language in there that may be a little uncomfortable for you to discuss. So be cautious with that. Handle it with respect, but also, why are we signing this in the first place? Because we want loyalty. I'm going to work hard for you. You're going to be loyal to me. You're going to let me know who you're talking to. You're going to let me know if you go to a new construction site and sign up for a new home, you're going to mention my name. So it's a discussion that you can have when your first or second interview with the buyer, saying, hey, here's what I'm going to do for you. Here's what I expect from you. So are there any questions or comments on this? This is the audience participation part, by the way.
I don't have any questions, Jeff.
Okay. So I mean, I think overall, either this or a loyalty agreement, of which we have a couple versions that aren't quite so detailed about compensation. You want one of those to look at as an alternative to using a buyer broker agreement. I'll be happy to send it to you. It's jonesnaples@kw.com, and I'll be happy to send you 2 or 3 buyer loyalty agreements that we have that are samples. Maybe if you feel like this is a little too hard lined, but basically you're with a buyer. Maybe you're going to spend a few months staying in touch with them. You're definitely going to spend a lot of time showing them property, and if you are successful, obviously getting the contract, you know, you're going to work hard for them, and that's why you're doing this. You're doing this because you're a trained professional, and you can make the buyer's experience looking for and purchasing a home in our market very enjoyable. You can take a lot of the detail work out of, and a lot of the worry out of what they're doing, and establish a trust relationship. And in doing so, you know, you expect them to show you the same respect you're showing them. So that's why buyer broker agreements are there. And as I say, there's a lot of agents that are experienced that are like, okay, I don't mind working with buyers, but I surely don't want them to take advantage of my time and then, you know, move on and deal with a listing broker or another agent that I'm, you know, when I'm still working hard with him. All right. So that's pretty much all of my my discussion for today. If there's any comments or questions that are in addition to what we've discussed today, or anything you have concerns about, you know, please use this as your time to chime in.
I'm good.
Go ahead.
I'm good, Jeff.
You're good? Okay,
I'm
everybody.
good.
I got a chat here. Let's see what's in the chat. Thank you. All righty. Well, I appreciate your attendance, and I wish you a great week. And always know that if you have a question or an issue, you can text or call Broker Jeff. I only work on the days that end in Y. That's my pledge to you. So everybody have a great day and thanks again.
Thanks, Jeff.